So let's have a look at what are the conjugate acids and what are the conjugate bases. First we have introduction about that conjugate acid. It was mainly proposed or explained according to the Bronsted-Lowry concept. Bronsted-Lowry concept. So what was the Bronsted or Bronsted-Lowry concept about the acid and bases? Mainly we have a look at the acids according to the Bronsted-Lowry concepts are the proton donor and bases are the inverse of this. These are the proton acceptor. So this was the main concept proposed by the Bronsted-Lowry in 1923. Now what are the conjugate acids and bases? If we have a look that acids after the donation of the proton changes into the negatively charged ions. These negatively charged ions are changes into the conjugate bases or the conjugate base. On the other hand, if we have a look on the base can accept the proton and after the acceptance of the proton it will be changes into the positively charged ion. Now this positively charged ion is known as conjugate acid. Now why this is known as the conjugate base and conjugate acid? What properties are the main constitute for this concept? So let's have a look. First we have the conjugate acids. So by definition conjugate acids we can explain that when a base is going to take a proton is going to takes a proton and proton we have H positive ion. When it takes a proton then it forms a positively charged species. Positively charged species. Now this positively charged species can be able to act like an acid. Why it can be able to act like an acid? Because now it is having a proton and it can donate the proton. So after the formation of the positively charged species, now this product can act like an acid. So it is known as the conjugate acid. Conjugate acid. For example, it will be clear from the example. If we have the reaction between ammonia and aqueous solution plus we have water as liquid. After the reaction, we just gain two products. The first one is NH4 positive and plus we have hydroxide ions as the aqueous solution. So here NH3 it is a base and why it is going to act like a base because after the reaction it has gain or it has accept the proton. So it is going to be act like an base. And after the reaction with the water, it produces NH4 positive, a positively charged species. Now this positively charged species is going to be called as conjugate acid. I have already told that if we have a Lorentz base, then it will produce a conjugate acid. And if we have a acid then it is going to produce a conjugate base. So bases will produce the conjugate acids. Now this conjugate acid as I'm going to separate out like this NH4 positive, it is having an extra proton and it can donate that proton. So it is having the capacity and it is having the ability to generate that proton, so that's why it is having the properties of acid. And if we will call it as conjugate acid, the reason is that because it has been produced from the Lorentz base. So this is the conjugate acid concept. Next we have the conjugate bases. So let's see how what are the conjugate bases. By definition we have read that when an acid donate the proton, then it will be changes into the negatively charged species. Now this negatively charged species is called as conjugate base. Why it is called as conjugate base? The reason behind the property of conjugate base, it will be cleared from the example. For example, we have acetic acid CH3COOH, its aqueous solution. Next we have its reaction with the water H2O as a liquid. After the reaction we have see that the two products CH3COOH negative and plus H3O positive. So these are also produced in the aqueous solution. So we have a look that as acetic acid, why it is called as acid first? Because it has donated the proton. It has donated the proton. So it is known as acid and it has produced a negatively charged product for the species. So this negatively charged species is known as the conjugate base. Why it is called as base and along with the word conjugate? The reason is that if I'm going to separate out CH3COO negative, it is a molecular ion because it is having a charge. So it is going to be act like a base because as negatively charged it can accept the proton and the substances that can accept the proton are known as bases. So it can act like a base and conjugate means it has been produced from the acid as the acid had produces the base, it is known as conjugate base and it can accept the proton, so that's why known as the conjugate base according to the Bronsted-Lowry concept. I hope you guys understand that what does mean by the conjugate base and conjugate acids. You can categorize it with the help of a chemical reaction. When you have the choice between acid and base, first of all you have to look at the properties whether it is having proton or whether it is having no proton, then we will be able to categorize it as acid as well as base according to this concept.